Be joining us shortly. This is September 3rd, 2024. This is our 7 o'clock board meeting. We're going to begin by indicating who is here. Go ahead, Karen, put you online first. Let's do you.
Karen Linder.
Clark Nelson.
Chris Wynn. Kim Chandler. Julie Jackson.
Todd Hauber. Ben Horsley.
Nicole McDermott, and Connie Burgess is walking in right as we're speaking about her.
Connie Burgess. Just saying her name for it.
Thank you. All right, we'd like to first of all welcome those of you who are here at our meeting. I'd like to recognize anybody visiting from PTA. Stand up and introduce yourselves, you guys.
Kimberly Swenson, Region Director.
I'm Amy Warren, I'm the Greater Council President.
I'm Liz Shellum, I'm the Region 5 Advocacy.
I'm Mary Grigg, Taylor's Council President.
Thank you, welcome, and thank you for our treats, you guys. We appreciate it. GEA.
Michelle Jones, President.
Welcome, Michelle. Granite Office Professionals.
Diana Pennington, Executive Representative. Amanda Pennington, High School Representative.
Thank you for being here. Do we have any from GESPA? Middle managers? Administrators, principals? And Granite Education Foundation? Christy, thanks for being here. And elected officials. I don't think I saw anybody, correct? Okay. All right, welcome everybody. We appreciate you joining us and those online. We're going to go ahead. John usually does the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you, Leslie? Thank you. John usually arranges that. I apologize.
If you'll stand and repeat the pledge with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and then we're going to turn the time over to Luke to introduce our reverends.
We'll have the Kearns High Band Director, Charles Dye, introduce the performance tonight.
And while he comes and introduces them, let's invite the board and superintendency to head on down.
Good evening. My name is Charles Dye. I'm the band director over at Kearns High School. Tonight, you get to be under the direction over here for this performance under our student drum major, Violet Black. She'll be conducting the music, which includes selections from Pirates of the Caribbean, which is part of our fall show. And so, Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl. This is our 19th year of being the only marching band in all of Granite School District. So we're excited to be here for you guys. We do parades, football games, and field show competitions every year. And last year, we even got the opportunity to be able to march through the streets of Disneyland representing our district. So without further ado, I'll turn the time over to our drum major.
So much, Kearns High School band, the marching band already left, but thank you. Parents, parents who are here with them, anybody? We appreciate the support. I just have to say, I know from the time that he started this marching band and he had like, I think 15 kids in it, And now they have not just that, but they've got they've got flags and the auxiliary, and he's doing a phenomenal job in building this, and it's something that really does help those kids connect to school. And marching band people are one of a kind. I'll just say that. So it was very cool. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to our Good News Minute. I'm going to turn the time over to Karen first, as she is online, and then we'll go from there.
I am sorry to not be there in person, but I wanted to share the beginning of school has been fun as I've checked in with different schools. There's always a fun, good, positive energy as you look into a new school year, and I've visited with some principals. For my secondary schools, a hot topic has been cell phone policies. So far, so good. As far as the feedback I'm receiving in one of my junior highs, a kid made a comment to his principal, "Hey, kids are a lot nicer when they don't have their phones. Maybe this is a good idea." I can't believe I'm saying that. So, there's mixed reviews I know out there, but so far I think it's had a very positive impact at the secondary level. As I've gone and visited some secondary schools and checked in there, I think one of the concerns I'm hearing out in my area is a declining enrollment. So they're concerned because we've got that fall surplus looming, and so I know that's an overall concern. Not really good news, but that's just feedback that I'm getting as I have visited with some of my elementaries that are all seeing a slight decline, and it's not very positive when you want to retain your teacher enrollment, your FTEs. So, but anyway, I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person, but I'm excited for the beginning of a good school year. It's been great so far.
And props to Karen for making it out and contacting all their principals before she was down and out with this, and so nice job, Karen. Well done. Clark, go ahead.
Thanks. I was at a community council meeting very early this morning, and I walked away with just a great sense of optimism and appreciation for the folks that are involved in the community council. And I hold community councils very dear to my heart because I think they play such an important role in each of our schools. But this new community council chair asked all of the council members, I thought, a very provocative question. He said, "What will we accomplish as a community council this year? At the end of the year, what will we say that we did?" And I just was thrilled at the conversation that it generated, and the genuine concern about what would this council do together to accomplish this year for the betterment of their school. So I thought that was worth celebrating tonight.
Thanks, Clark. Chris?
I've visited most of my schools. So far, I don't like to bombard the first couple weeks of school because it's crazy, but even though there were some challenges, it was very exciting to see the kids there, and so excited to be back at school, and the teachers anticipating how many they're going to have in their class, because I had a couple schools that had a lot more than they were expecting, which was really surprising for some of them. Also, I learned the elk run herd. I got to go to the elk herd, and we learned the school cheer, which was super fun. And then Whittier Elementary hosted a family movie night. So I took my granddaughters to that family movie night, and we got to see, I can't remember what it's called, Migration, I think. Anyway, it was so fun to have those community events so close to the first of school already. One thing that I've noticed at most of my schools is they are also anticipating that enrollment and to see how FTE is going to work out in their schools. And I know there's a lot of challenges with that, but I appreciate our staff working so hard to make sure that those kids' needs are being met, regardless if they end up changing a class or moving a little bit. So great job, teachers, for being that smiling face for those kiddos that are maybe unsure of what class they'll be in eventually. I also got to tour the maintenance department. I wanted to thank Rex and GEF for setting up that fun event for our maintenance department. I had never been to our maintenance department, and it's amazing, and they do such great quality things in our for our schools, and I know they worked so hard this summer to make sure our schools were up and ready. So thank you for that tour and GEF for facilitating that. And my last thing is I just want to thank our region PTA for getting their kickoff started. They had a great turnout, and their commitment to our schools is fantastic. We have some great leadership on our region. And so I just encourage parents to look for those PTAs in their school that they can join and be a part of that great parent involvement that is so needed in our schools.
Connie?
Well, my good news minute is thanks to the board, to the superintendent who gave teachers those extra 2 days, the Monday and Tuesday before school started. We received many thanks, and it's something that I have really wanted to have for our teachers as well as for the students, to be able to not come a full week, but to come just for a few days. One of the grand openings to me is we charter the Utah International School, and to be able to go see the excitement that they had also when the school opened in the new area that they're in. I agree that teachers, with the change in enrollment and having to be in that situation until the 1st of October makes it difficult. But thanks to the teachers who are so willing to put up with large classes and hopefully be able to have more students so that they can split. But I'm just grateful for all of the teachers and the efforts that they put forth, and it's a new year, a new school year, and it will be a good one.
Kim?
Well, literally the day after our last meeting until this weekend, I've been out of town. So I have not made it to a lot of events, but first order of business since I've been back, it is Constitution Month, and I've been reaching out, trying to schedule time to get into schools and see, the programs and events that are happening there. So I'm looking forward to that. I'll have more to report on that next month. So thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
I want to report that Skyline High has a student body in a new building, and it's been really exciting to watch them connect and have, bright light windows. Felt so dark in there now that I'm in the new building. And so that's been really exciting. I wanted to note that this month is going to be, we're going to be inviting all of our legislators into our classrooms with USBA Legislator in the Classroom Day, which will be at the end of this month. So look out for that, because the legislators who represent us have, for the most part, been very excited and about coming and visiting our schools, and we're hoping that we can show them the great things that they've done for us, as well as look for ways to collaborate to solve different problems that we're seeing for our kids. I also just wanted to say that today, this is my major good news that's honestly making me a little stuck up today, and that is that I had the charter school in my area contacted one of my principals and said, hey, do you think we could meet to talk about how you got your RISE scores so high? And so I'm super stuck up, and I'm not ashamed of it. And I'm ready to spread the word that Granite knows how to help our kids achieve, but we'll also show you how we're doing it while keeping them having a strong sense of well-being. And so that's my good news minute.
Thanks, Julie. For mine, I just wanted to share, Chris and I were able to visit with the SBOs for the SBO kickoff, and what a great group of kids they are. Amazing, great ideas. I love that Mitch, as he worked with them, he asked them, how are you going to help implement the cell phone policy into your school? What can you do to encourage this? Really got them thinking, and those kids are just an incredible bunch of kids, so it was really fun to do that. I do want to give a brief minute to PTA and School Community Council, because I think there's a lot of myths out there that if you join the PTA, you're committing to some time, which is not true. I mean, we'd love you to have some time to spend in school, right? But we want you just to be part of the PTA. PTA is a great organization that supports our schools and supports our students and supports our teachers. And you signing up is just saying, we're here to support, and that's it. There's lots of ways that you can serve if you do have a desire to in the PTA, things that you don't have to do at school, but you can do at home. But I just would really encourage anybody listening, anybody who has the ability to join that PTA. Grandparents can join, aunts, uncles, anybody who's there to support. Please consider joining your local PTA. I have committed to join all of the ones at the schools that I represent. So I have joined some of them. I haven't been able to join all of them, but I would just encourage all of you to do that. Oh, there's a QR code to do that, right? So anyway, they're great organizations. Also, the School Community Council, which really does impact. I love that Clark pointed that out. It does impact a lot of what you can do at a school level, and these are parents who are able to dictate that. And so I think that's an important thing to do. So thank you. We'll go ahead and move on. Luke, do we have any patron participation? No. Okay. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and move on to the consent agenda. We've had these.
Are we going to do recognitions?
Oh, just kidding. I'm sorry. I'm skipping over recognitions. Sorry.
No problem.
Go for
Good
it.
evening, everyone. We have 2 recognitions tonight. First, we'll have Todd Hauber present the 2024 Achievement of Excellence in Procurement Award. And then we'll have Leslie Bell and Ann Reese present the 2024 Granite School District Teacher of the Year.
I'll ask Jared Gardner to come up and join me here for a second. He is an excellent example of leadership in the district, and he's brought his staff with him as well to be recognized in this recognition that we have today. Again, this is for the Achievement in Excellence in Procurement Award. We're in our 10th year, 10 years running in receiving this recognition, and it's only been around since '95. So almost half the time it's been in existence, we've been participating in it. So I'll let Jared introduce your staff and invite them to come visit you, and I'll have some more to share.
Thank you, Todd. Members of the board, superintendent, we're grateful to be recognized. We're kind of the people behind the curtain sometimes, but we believe in what we're about. And so tonight, I'm glad that these folks came back to join us. So we've got Jessica Brophy, Angela Pontius, both buyers for the district. And we've got Julie Fisher, who is a buyer manager, and Skip Foster, our warehouse manager. We'd love to come shake your hands.
So the recognition, again, was started in '95, and the areas that they recognize are innovation, professionalism, productivity, e-procurement, and leadership in procurement. And again, we have an awesome unit and all the work that they do to support us.
Congratulations, everyone. That's awesome. Proud of your team.
Well done. Thank you so much, Jared and your team. Amazing.
All right, I'll turn the time over to Ann Reese, the Director of Teacher Onboarding and Instructional Coaching, to introduce our Teacher of the Year.
Thanks, Les. All right, he's making his way up. Board, Superintendent Horsley, and members of the executive leadership team, it's my honor to present to you the 2024 Teacher of the Year for Granite School District, Saeed Sharifi. I've got a few little things from his application and things we've gotten to know about him. Just take a minute to share so you can understand a little bit more about Saeed. So for Saeed, teaching is a sacred act that traces its roots back to the tumultuous chapter in his family's history. In 1979, his father, a graduate of the Sorbonne teaching French, and his mother, a middle school math teacher from Kabul, Afghanistan, found their lives abruptly upended when the Soviets occupied their homeland. The consequences were swift and harsh. His father imprisoned and tortured, his mother forced to flee with his then 2-year-old brother across the treacherous mountains of Afghanistan to reach Iran. After enduring 7 months of torture, his father escaped the prison, and the Sharifi family were officially refugees of war. With his uncle already residing in Utah, the family followed suit and found solace here in Utah. Yet the journey to rebuild their lives came at the cost of leaving behind the teaching profession that had defined his parents. As Saeed navigated his own path in life, the realization that both of his parents were teachers planted a seed in his mind. In a particular way, teaching was in his blood. Driven by a desire to mend the scars of war on his family, he pursued a career in education. Teaching became his way of resurrecting what the Sharifi family had lost amid the upheaval of becoming refugees, the presence of a teacher in the family. Saeed has said, "For me, teaching is not just a profession, it's a sacred endeavor, a means of healing the wounds of the past. Each day as I step into the classroom, I'm driven by a profound sense of purpose, to wash away the sins of yesterday through the act of teaching. It's my way of contributing to the restoration of a lineage disrupted by the ravages of war. I stand in front of my students with a mission to cultivate independence. Independence and freedom are the heartbeat of my classroom. It's what drives my lessons, our interactions, and the choices that we make. I believe that education is not merely about disseminating information, but about empowering individuals to navigate life." So it's with my pleasure that I introduce Mr. Sharifi, a graduate of Kearns High. He's been teaching 7 years and 3 of those at Harvickson and Granite School District. He was recently awarded the Granite School District Excel for Outstanding Educator Award, and I'm proud to present him as our Teacher of the Year. It's also of note that he's a finalist in the State Teacher of the Year competition, and we'll find out on Thursday, but he'll always be our State Teacher of the Year at heart. So I present to you Saeed Sharifi.
Congratulations, and thank you so much for all that you do for your students. All right, now we can move on to granted elected officials. I apologize, I'm so sorry, you guys. Granted elected officials participation time. I don't see that we have any elected officials. And then patron participation time. We didn't have anybody sign up. Now we will move on to our consent agenda. We've had these consent items for days, been able to ask any questions. And if there's no questions presently, I will entertain a motion.
I move we accept the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept the consent agenda. Is there any question or further discussion?
I'll just comment that there are a couple of software contracts again in the consent agenda that I don't support, so I'll be voting no.
Okay. All right, any further questions or comments? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And opposed?
Nay.
All right, motion passes. And with that, we will move on to our action item, which is our update. I'm going to invite Steve Hogan up, who is our Director of Planning and Boundaries, to update us on our PAC presentation, our PAC study. I just want to make sure that it's noted so that you all understand. In order for us to be in compliance with the law, while we did go ahead and approve this, there is if you notice on the presentation slides, there are 3 action items at the end of this that we do have to make for the formality purpose of making sure that we are in compliance with the law with HB 341. So that is why at the end we have those 3 motions that are there.
But just to note that they are under item number 12. So if you can't find them, it's because they're under the second reading. I think they got in the wrong spot. But I know it's important that we use this verbiage in our motion, so that's why I wanted to make sure we all saw where that is.
I have it on I have it on 11.
What? What did somebody send me the fake news agenda?
You have an apple on yours.
I have an apple. Wow.
Here we go. First,
kidding.
I have
I'm
to
totally
follow
kidding.
Saeed. Now I have this. Okay. Board Board President, Board Superintendent Horsley, and others joining us tonight. Again, my name is Steve Hogan. I'm the Director of Planning and Boundaries for Granite School District for those joining online or new to this process. The agenda, as you can see, is pretty quick, actually, despite 6 items there. This is the 3500 South Corridor Study. I will offer a quick review and update. Some of these slides are simply for context and for others that are joining perhaps that aren't familiar with this process or this study. And then an overview, we are talking about a small expansion, and then, as you mentioned, and I don't want to bury the lead, but it is at the end of the agenda, but a lot of this meeting here tonight is simply about satisfying language of an updated statute. So a law was passed by the legislature that took effect in May, and as we met to review that update, we thought, you know what, we better make this technically correct and before we move forward. So with that of course, you know, as you know, is our process. We're in the just past the middle of this process, where I've started some of the fall meetings even this afternoon, and we have meetings this week and next week where I will not be home for the next 2 weeks. So this is just a screenshot of the slide we had in our July presentation as a reminder. That's really where we left it off, and it's not changed dramatically since then. We still have on the agenda the potential closure of Orchard and Redwood, and with the possibility of closure and other issues and other boundary issues around DLI. But that really is where we're at with that. Other schools may see boundary adjustments as closure decisions are determined, and as we're starting to work through those. Most years we have these fall meetings mid to late September. We're trying to get those in earlier, a little earlier as we go, so we have more opportunities and time for feedback and revisions and to work on things as they come up. So don't be surprised if after this meeting, between now and the October board meeting, we do have some other revisions or updates to what we're talking about tonight. This is the area that we've been talking about, outlined by the green box. One of the request proposals from the PAC tonight is, you'll see a motion to expand that box just a little bit on the west side. More specific, you can see that yellow arrow. It's right on a boundary between Lake Ridge and Pleasant Green. Even more specifically, it's that street. We're talking one street where there's a new development. We were aware of this development that's been happening for more than a year, but we thought, or at least I thought, that the street that existed already was just going to simply go further north. They decided to throw me a curveball and curved that street about 35 feet to the west, which adjusted our boundary a little funny there. So our proposal so far is to continue to study this, or ask that this area be added to the study, with so far that being moved into the Lake Ridge boundary for that one street. Any questions about that so far? So with that addition, if that happened, this would just simply be the new area, if you will, expanded a little further west. Now, again, just a brief overview of where we're at so far. Orchard. If the potential Orchard closure and boundary adjustments, as they are currently constituted or proposed and will be talked about in next week's meetings, look a lot like this, with Orchard there and it being split largely along, I think that's 6,800, right? Chris, is that 6,800, kind of down the middle? And it ends up with the curve at the bottom being 6,820 or 6,880 at the bottom. But in essence, splits that area in half, with those students going to Copper Hills and then Whittier. One thing to keep in mind here, and I don't want to get us too far in the weeds, but remember this past December of 23, we, as a district, the board approved some boundary adjustments for reconfiguration. This area, Orchard, is currently, as of today, currently feeds into Hunter Junior High and Hunter High. What was approved in December to be implemented next year, next fall, is this Orchard being fed into, and I'm hesitating to make sure I get this right, to Matheson and then Cypress. Under this proposal, before anything is actually implemented, we are suggesting that the left side or the west side that would go to Copper Hills will still go as we had suggested or proposed and have been approved into Matheson. However, the part going into Whittier would remain as it is today in Hunter Junior High. So that's a slight change from what was proposed a few months ago. However, given these changes, and I can send you a map, and I will talk about this in more detail at our meetings next week. Any question about that part? It's a little convoluted because we're going back and then forward, then back, and making sure that there are any questions about that.
I think I just want to make this clear. So you're saying if the Orchard population gets divided, we would split, it would be a split feeder neighborhood technically, because the junior high that Whittier goes to is Hunter and the junior high that Copper Hills goes to is Matheson.
Split neighborhood, not boundary.
Feeder, not boundary,
correct,
but the neighborhood.
But neighborhood,
Okay.
yes, if you look at it that way, sure. Sure.
Does
Which-
Wright Elementary, where does Wright go? Is that Hunter? It goes to Matheson? Matheson and then Cypress?
Right, correct.
Yeah, okay.
Steve, when you come back and talk about numbers with us, will you also include how losing that population impacts Hunter? Because in my mind, that's probably at least 100 kids, and that's a lot for a junior high to lose. I'm sorry, Hunter Junior.
Right, you're right. Absolutely, and I probably should have put these numbers on here tonight. I will have them, I can send them to you. I will absolutely have them when I go to the communities next week to show you how those numbers flesh out. But bottom line, the reason for this is there's still growth, and as we've seen over the summer, growth in that Matheson area, further west, Elk Run, Matheson, and so on. And we had prepared to leave a little room, if you remember, at Hunter Junior for this. So there is room at Hunter Junior for it. We're talking about 90, approximately 90 junior high students there.
I have another question. So Copper Hills was also getting that new neighborhood from Elk Run. Is that correct? In the boundary adjustment?
Correct.
So what is this with putting half of Orchard in? What does that put Copper Hills at?
Right.
Approximately.
I'll get you that number, but keep in mind they lose 6th grade.
Right.
And so when we add that small portion that's just to the, just on the edge of that part of that Elk Run boundary and add these, there's still, bottom line, plenty of room.
Even with the new neighborhood in the north
Yes.
quadrant? Okay.
Yes. The next area or the next closure potential, we've talked a bit about Redwood Elementary, potential Redwood closure and boundary adjustments. Currently, we have that Redwood boundary proposal to split it among 3 different schools. You can see the one area going towards Stansbury, and that's, I can just tell you those numbers, approximately 180 students from Stansbury that would be proposed to go, or sorry, from Redwood to Stansbury. Approximately 160 students from Redwood to Wilson. And then that bottom corner down there, about 125 to 130 students. That bottom area is a little more flexible because there's quite a few DLI students from that area that go to Granger DLI. And we'll flesh that out. But that's what those numbers look like if that proposal goes through. Keeping in mind that similarly to Copper Hills, Stansbury currently has 6th grade, Granger currently has 6th grade. Wilson does not, but Stansbury and Granger do. So when they lose a decent amount, combine that with what we could talk about later, and that is Stansbury potentially, depending on what decision is made, losing some DLI students, they will have plenty of room to add 180 students.
Are those students going to be bused?
I don't have the busing
mostly the
map.
Wilson, I'm
Right.
looking at the ones going to Wilson.
Right. I'm pretty sure all, if not all, would be.
All of them?
I don't have the map, but it's far enough that I'd be shocked if that was not, simply because of the roads and the the hazard routes that's in
I was
between.
going to say, yeah, they'd be across I-15, so
Yeah.
that would,
Yeah.
wouldn't that automatically
It typically
qualify
is.
them? Okay.
What was the rough number on those that would be going to Wilson from that?
160.
It was 160?
160.
So is that the river, that east part?
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially the bottom
So-
part there, Granger, yes.
So those kids went to Granger before Walker was built. Those students, lots of trailer park. I mean, we have huge trailer park. Is that where that area is? I don't know where the 33rd South is on this. I tried to figure it out.
Right. Some of those, we kept some of those students that are west of the river going to Granger in this case. I'm trying to remember because we had Roosevelt that became Walker, and that was a large change of what that looked like. I would honestly, Connie, have to go back and look to remember exactly that area and whose boundary that was.
Yeah. It was, yeah, okay. We'll look.
Under this particular scenario, what junior high feeder patterns would these 3 splits feed into at that point?
The only one that would be different, so Redwood currently feeds and would not change from Granite Park, but they would still remain at Granger High, so the area going to Wilson. Stansbury would not change. The only one that we do have to look at, if I remember right, is the one going to Valley. There is part of that area that currently feeds into Valley Junior.
I thought that section, as you and I discussed this, east of Redwood would still be part of the Granger network, but they would still go to Granite Park, or you're saying they would remain, that's already split feeder, right?
The purple section?
Redwood Elementary as a whole.
To say that part, I want to make sure I'm understanding. Say it one more
Redwood
time.
Elementary is
As a whole.
already a current split feeder to the junior highs.
Yes.
And that doesn't change.
Before, I'm hesitating because I need to look at that valley area. Go ahead, Karen.
Can you, what area are you saying, how is Valley Junior affected again?
If, in order to not create a split feeder situation, and I apologize, I'll look it up quickly after, but it's either the bottom right or bottom left of Redwood. That wood is currently part of Valley Junior. I believe it's the part that would go to Granger on the bottom right.
Okay, so that would be more kids going to Valley or fewer?
Correct, more. If I remember right, approximately 75.
See, that's.
Thank you.
So we're looking at the current boundary map on the website. Everything east of 20, basically all of Redwood is currently boundaried towards the junior high to Granite Park, and then they go back to Granger High School. So I guess the question is that section now that would go to Wilson, they would still go to Granite Park, and then they'd come back over to Granger High. Is that your question, Clark?
That would be correct.
Okay.
Is there a reason why, have we looked at, would they, since they're already going to Granite Park, and we're going to make that split now, have we looked at the possibility of sending them to Cottonwood? Or is that just, I mean, I know that's really far to Cottonwood.
That's the biggest issue when PAC responds to that. It's just, we know Cottonwood needs the numbers and Granger could use the relief, but it's simply distance and the challenges that come along with that.
And there are some other things that we're looking at long-term. Their PAC is to help relieve Granger.
Correct.
Well, years ago, I'm talking years ago, when they made this change, it saddened me because those kids were able to walk to Eisenhower, And the change made it so kids from Valley were bused to Eisenhower, as well as these kids that could walk were bused. So it was an old decision, and my heart still is very sad because we lost some good kids that, went to Eisenhower.
Right.
Just a comment.
Okay. Then I'll jump to the next area quickly, and that is Wilson, some potential additions to Wilson. Now, this came out of a detailed assessment that we originally started looking at the family shelter. You can see, and it's kind of small here, I'll change the color next time, but it says FS, that block at I-15 and 3300 South, the family shelter that is still proposed, and I think a decent chance of happening. I don't think we've seen absolute confirmation of all legislative funding for that, but right now we're assuming that it still will be funded and we'll have occupants there at some point this school year. But if you look a little further south, actually just below the green box in the Walker boundary, at the bottom, within a block or two of our district boundary, there's a street down there called Howick, Howick. They're currently building the Howick apartments. Howick will have at least 100, maybe a few more subsidized housing units. We typically get quite a few students out of our units, 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms in this area. I anticipate that those are scheduled to be completed by next fall, so we would see impact next school year. Those students would be going to Olin Walker. Olin Walker is nearing capacity now. In order to make a room for those students, what I'm proposing so far is these two sections. The one you can see on the south end with the arrow going up to Wilson that has approximately 50 students. The other area on just north of Olin Walker is a large area, but mostly industrial, has about 25 students, potentially both going to Wilson Elementary. And yes, there would be some busing. Again, I don't have those maps, but there would have to be some busing involved with those. And that, again, is an effort. Wilson is still low. They have about 370 students, and they have the capacity to handle some additional students.
How big is the family shelter that they're building? Like, how many families can that house?
The best estimates we've been given so far is K-12, and this is a comparison that I've talked to other shelters around the state and other people that are in the know. Their best data says they would anticipate at any one time we could have up to 100 K-12 students from that shelter. The majority of those would be elementary. The question remains, we don't know how many of those. We think a majority of the elementary, quote elementary, will even be preschool, because that's most often what you see in shelters. This varies from year to year. It varies with immigrant populations and weather and other issues, but we could see our best forecast so far of how that would impact Wilson would be anywhere from 30 to 60 students at a given time. And that rotates. They typically try to rotate out about every 6 to 8 weeks.
What kind of supports are we prepared to provide for those students as they come in? Because it's obviously going to be a very challenging population. And how do we support Wilson with that?
We've had significant conversations internally, not just in the PAC, but with others in HR and through Aaron Wilson's office, through Title I, and there have been significant supports committed to Wilson to make sure we're prepared to have the resources necessary.
Do we know when those kids will start showing up? I know the shelter's opening sooner than later.
When I talked to a representative from the Road Home a few weeks ago, their best guesstimate was at the earliest December. Because even if everything is approved, including funding in the next few weeks, they have a ramp-up time of hiring and training staff of typically 90 days. In fact, she said best case scenario, 90 days. So right now, we would anticipate December.
When would this boundary adjustment, particularly the shelter portion, take place then? Still next fall?
Yes.
So they would, if anybody came in this year, they would go to Walker.
That would be something we could talk about. I mean, technically, they would be in the Walker boundary. However, in my conversations with others in the Jordan district, how they've handled that is we believe we have some flexibility if we choose as a district to have them come this year if we get students before the boundary is officially changed.
So we could designate just that unit to be at certain schools then? Like assigned
Right,
to
just
schools?
that thumbnail area of the boundary of the family shelter.
So technically speaking, under the law, I'm looking at Doug and Steve because we've had this conversation, and Chief of Staff Nerd might have been involved with that as well. We could actually formalize this boundary adjustment, at least a smaller portion, to begin in January, as long as we've gone through the 30-day period that we anticipate the board will approve. So I think that's something we need to take into consideration so that we're not moving kids back and forth and impacting their already disrupted lives.
We certainly don't want to do that, and that is part of the update in the statute is, again, closures need a 90-day notification, boundary changes a 30-day. So we hope to have final recommendations, and if we could, in the next board meeting, even October, finalize that for New Year, then I believe that's possible.
But to clarify, that's just that family shelter that would go into effect in January, correct?
Correct.
Not the whole, not everything here, so.
Correct.
We just need to clarify that on the board, whatever the board chooses to do in the November and December meetings, just clarify that on the motion.
And it's interesting because really the law, the statutes are written really for notification. And we're notifying an area. We're notifying South Salt Lake City because there are no residents, quote, to notify. There are no occupants to notify, at least yet. But we still want to stick to the statute as it's written.
So the legal language of that, to clarify what Steve's indicating, is those who are within the boundary adjustment, so there are none, there are no current patrons in that area, and then those who are potentially impacted. So we would probably, just out of an abundance of caution, send out a notification to all Wilson patrons indicating that we're adding this portion to their boundary.
Which they've been aware of this situation for many months now. But again, as part of a motion tonight, we would get have the official motion to send out more notifications for that.
Clark?
In follow-up to the superintendent's point about not having children moving back and forth, are there any of these Olene Walker students in the green shaded to the bottom area there, are any of those students who were previously at Moss and changed to Olene Walker at the beginning of this school year, or excuse me, the last school year ago?
Well, all of those were Moss before.
All of that
2
area
years ago.
all of
2
that
years ago.
shaded area was Moss previously, and then they would be shifted to Wilson.
That area,
scenario?
so just to make sure we're saying the same thing, the area just to the west of the Olene Walker, the words Olene Walker, and south of Wilson, I'll double check, but I believe that was part of the Moss boundary.
So that's just a concern that comes to my mind of those kids, some
Having
of those
to move
families
again.
would have shifted just a year ago.
Having to move again, right.
And then would be shifting to yet another elementary school next year. So something to be cognizant of, perhaps.
This one's a little unusual, and we have looked at that. One of the challenges with Olene Walker is just the size of the property. There are no options for relocatables there. Oftentimes, we'll just absorb new students and with relocatables for a few years to see if that maintains, but without that option, we have what we have. So we're more bound to make some of these changes than we typically would be.
Is it possible to leave them for an extra year and just move the other section just to give them at least a little stability? Have you looked at that? Is there capacity in the building for that? Or is there just like, we're done, we're full?
I think what I would do is check, double check, which I've done, triple and quadruple check, and that's Howick, to make sure they're still on schedule. The last time I drove by and looked at it, That building is going up quickly. And so I believe they'll be there. And that's, again, based on, if this were a typical apartment complex, I would not be as worried. But since it's the subsidized housing, we typically get quite a few students out of our subsidized housing.
Yeah, Clark, I had the same concern. And I just want to remember, I mean, so we moved those students to Olene Walker in our 2 times ago boundary study. And then there was like 120 students show up at Olene that same year that they came out of nowhere, right? So that's one of the complexities is we had this, I mean, totally non-predicted population shift at Olene Walker, right?
Yep.
It's one of those deals where you're looking at, you're thinking to yourself, God, I just moved that. Did I screw that up? Did I overlook something? And I'm not sure that I can see where we missed something. I mean, that's a really hard one for me. And so anyway, I'm in the same boat as you, Clark, where I'm like, especially those families, you don't want to disrupt them either, you know?
In addition to that, I think it's important for our board to recall that part of the rationale in moving those students from Moss Elementary to Olene Walker was that Olene Walker had the family center resources that were there that would be a huge benefit to those students. So I'm also reticent to forget that important point in potentially moving them to Wilson.
And as I asked Steve about that very thing, we moved them because they were going to be better served at Olene. He was telling me he believes Wilson has the same services, but is going to check for me.
They have the
right?
ability, either the same services or the ability. They don't have the family resource building next to it, but they have a family engagement center out there now, and based on their demographic, the resources should be available.
So I will say the Bud Bailey apartments, which were the ones that we were very concerned about, that went to Moss, they're actually not in that area that would be moved. They are south of 3900, and that's south of that line.
Is that line 3900 south?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
That's
Correct.
helpful.
Oh, that's helpful to know
Correct.
that.
That was the intent of the Bud Bailey area.
I think we're going to continue to see, we generally see, especially with our impoverished populations, when there is economic turmoil in any shape or form, huge fluctuations within. So I think to the degree that we're trying to create space in all of these facilities, because we do have the room, is probably the end goal of PAC in this rationale and decision making.
And under that same rationale, I think it's important that we don't pack Wilson. Like, we got to make sure if we're going to do this, let's make sure there's space to add for that flexibility.
Remind me where the new apartments are being built.
So they are
in this-
near the bottom.
Near the
below-
bottom of
Actually,
this?
just below the green box line,
But near
near the bottom of our district boundary. It's actually a Mill Creek address, but they're on Howick, Howick, at the end of Howick
Is
Street.
it close to the Bud Bailey ones?
It's not too far.
Okay.
So you have,
Pull your microphone down, Connie.
you have I-15, and Bud Bailey is up over the viaduct from Walker.
On the east side, yes.
So where is Howlick? Is it closer to Walker, or is it closer to
Closer to
Main
Walker.
Street?
It's closer to, well,
So is,
it's right off of Main and just south of it's closer to Walker. I believe it's down a little further. I don't have my glasses.
right between Main and
So it's.
Yeah, it's below. I believe it's below that boundary. It's in the Walker boundary, below the green, to
Below
the
green,
right.
Below. Go down.
It's in that area down there.
So. So it is by, but yeah, it's just west on the map. It's just west of the Bud Bailey Apartments.
Okay.
So that's another concern, though. We were very concerned about the Bud Bailey Apartments getting busing, and they just barely qualified. Does that mean the Howick will
Right.
also?
I believe it's further away. I'll double check with Dr. Gaddy, but that shouldn't be an issue. If Bud Bailey is getting it, and I believe they're further, I'll double check
I
though.
think Bud Bailey is further east from Walker, so.
It is. Yeah, I can see it now on our map on our school search. You can see Howick right here. So my question, sorry, I didn't mean to cut off board members, is back to this capacity issue, making sure we have space. I'm assuming the reason PAC recommended moving that section north to Wilson instead of east to Lincoln was if they're going to be transported either way, we have plenty of capacity also at Lincoln as well. Could you talk about what PAC's decision-making was?
I don't think Lincoln is off the table. This was, we did talk, I went back and looked at my notes after a conversation early with Julie, and we did look at Lincoln, and I don't think it was off the table, but it was more that Lincoln had in the 400s in enrollment, and Wilson was just smaller. Now, what I will go back and look at, Wilson is getting more development. So far, it's not the type of development we get a lot of student yield from. They're still the market value type upper end homes. Lincoln, however, is pretty much landlocked as far as development, and they don't have room for as much. So
that was my thought as well. And looking at this section here, depending on the number of students that you indicated, I want to say 60 something?
About 50-ish.
50-ish. If they're going to be transported, Lincoln is closer in proximity. So, but I'm assuming State Streets are concerned, and if we're transporting anyway, then we could take that into consideration.
Those would be transported regardless.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So, and that'll be something that when we get out to the communities that we'll investigate a little further. But I think I'll respond quickly to one thing you said, Julie, and that is what we're seeing now at Walker is as anticipated a couple of years ago. The difference being the newcomers that we saw last year. About 80 to 90 plus newcomers that we have no way to forecast. And so, and that can go down next year, that can go up again. Those are harder. So again, what we kept coming back to is we probably would not be proposing these changes if not for the fact that Walker just simply doesn't have room for the flexibility provided by relos. We would probably wait at least a year, see who shows up, see who remains. But that's one of the challenges. We only have a handful of schools in this district that can't handle relos, and that's one of them. So it forces our hand more than we would like.
I still would like to try to brainstorm a way to not ping pong that square of kids around, and I just was thinking about that population of Walker that's underneath that does include Bud Bailey could move back to Moss, and that maybe would be less of a ping pong if you're going back to your old school.
There's two sides at least to every coin, and that means if they go back to Moss, then the impact of the feeders and more split feeders and how we were trying to impact Bonneville, and there were a lot of things going on there.
Yeah, okay.
Questions on that part? Finally, the DLI solution, potential solution to be determined. The red area, really we're looking at, as we know, Valley Crest, Monroe, Stansbury, Hillsdale. Granger has been taken off the table. Had our first meeting this afternoon that I went to and talked to faculty of those schools, DLI faculty. The next 2 days, I have meetings with patrons, parents, DLI parents of these schools. And one of our big areas of emphasis is a survey and as much feedback as possible so that we can get information and intentions of these families based on, remember, our two options at this point. Those two options, option one being go from 4 to 2 schools. Either Valley Crest or Monroe has a DLI, and the other one doesn't, and then either Stansbury or Hillsdale has DLI, and the other does not. That's option one. Option two is a designated DLI magnet. One of those four schools mentioned is the DLI magnet, and the other three do not. That DLI magnet is just as it sounds, it's DLI Spanish only, and we hope to get good feedback from those parents. We do need, I would caution and remind that we need this feedback ASAP over the next 2 to 3 weeks, if not sooner, so that when I come back in October, if a decision can be made, for instance, if it is a DLI magnet school, then we have to decide for sure what the new boundary looks like. If one of those schools is a DLI only school, then they lose a traditional boundary, and we have to make those boundary adjustments. We have time to do that. This is not a closure, this is a change in programming. So we're not bound by the 90-day notice, we are still bound by the 30-day notice on boundary adjustments. So, but we need to move from point A to point B, and that's the DLI decision before I can go to point C, which is boundary adjustments. So this one, as always, it feels like I'm saying every year that this year's kind of tricky, but there are a lot of moving parts in these. There always are.
Go ahead, Julie.
Steve, on option one, we know that if we were to consolidate to 2 schools, that we have 2 schools that could handle that entire population, that are big enough for both schools. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes. The issue is not so much the 2 schools that could handle more DLI. There's capacity at in any of the 4 to handle more. It's really more about what happens to the school that does not have DLI and the impact of fewer students at those schools. And that's assuming we need to know first how many of those parents would choose to have their kids, if they're not going to remain at their boundary school at DLI, will they go to another school? Because of their proximity between Hillsdale and Stansbury and the proximity between Valley Crest and Monroe, they're most, except for extreme corners, are still 1.5 miles. In other words, there's no transportation. So will you go to the new school, one of 2, without transportation is the issue.
Yeah. And then on option 2, well, now I forgot that question, so hold.
Transportation?
I'll ask it in a
others?
minute.
But,
no.
Kim had a question. Let ponder and write it down to you.
Because mine, I was going to ask the question you just talked about. Has there been any discussion or consideration, because that is a concern, if we do combine DLI programs and we leave a school behind that it then has a very small student body, has there been discussion about, instead of just the program, closing the school and merging those student bodies, basically? Does that make sense?
Right.
Like in option 1, kind of? Is that what you're kind of saying? But like a hybrid between, like a magnet school and then still
This is what I
schools?
was under the wrong impression. I
That's what
thought that you were saying we would like combine those schools. So
It would
Valley
just be
Crest
combining the
and
DLI students.
Yeah, just the
Monroe.
DLI,
Yeah, but I was thinking now that we're going to consolidate the entire schools. But you're saying no, out of Valley Crest and Monroe, maybe you'd just keep DLI at Valley Crest and Monroe would stay open. I was thinking that you were saying those would merge, traditional and
Right.
non-traditional programs.
So that's what I'm
But-
asking, though, is
but
has there been discussion
yeah,
about
has
that
that been
happening?
considered?
It was talked about, but it goes back to this slide, and that is the impact or implications of closing Redwood. So let's say you combine Hillsdale and Stansbury. That makes them pretty large even without 6th grade. And then does that limit us on what we could possibly do with Redwood? Because then to take those 180 from Redwood to take to Stansbury, then we're pretty large again with even more busing. So it's not been an option. Yes, we talked about it, and yes, we looked at it, but in the end, the DLI task force came up with those 2 options. DLI from 2 schools, from 4 to 2, or a magnet school.
Hey Steve, this is Karen.
Yes.
So I'm looking at this, and I hear your question. I'm looking at, Stansbury Park getting, kids from Redwood, and then all of a sudden we make them the DLI, out of Stansbury and Hillsdale. All of a sudden, Stansbury could be, several hundred kids, 800-900 kids, and Hillsdale is depleted to like 250. So I think that's what some of us are touching on, as far as Kim and Julie. Like, I know that we're not coming out right, but in doing this DLI, how we structure it really is going to, I'm worried about the schools that don't have DLI and setting them up for failure in the future just because we're depleting their boundary kids that aren't interested in DLI. Does that make sense what I'm saying? So as the PAC is considering, say, between Stansbury and Hillsdale, I'm just looking, if you choose Stansbury for DLI over Hillsdale, that doesn't set Hillsdale up for success. Or likewise between Valley Crest and Monroe, depending on which way. So
Right.
I'm hopeful that that's a kind of a hot topic at PAC conversation, during PAC conversations. I just don't want to see us in the process of trying to fix DLI, setting up, awesome DLIs, whether it's one or two DLI
Right.
programs and elementary stuff.
A couple of things I would add there. So much of what we need to do will be determined in the next 3-ish weeks about the data we get back from the DLI parents. Hillsdale, remember, Stansbury has 2 DLI classes per grade. Hillsdale has 1. They're the 1 teacher model per grade. And out of that 1, how many of those students would choose to leave, whether it's from Magnet or if it's at Stansbury? That could determine what we do.
I'd like to point out too that it's really tricky. These are really tricky decisions to make because that data holds a certain level of fickleness to it. In that, as a parent, I can still choose to do whatever I want in the end once the decisions are made, and so that's really tricky. That you don't really have concrete evidence or data to go on these things. Steve, I wanted to just verify, we don't have any models in Utah of a DLI magnet school, do we?
We have one in Salt Lake. I think it's a charter school, but it's west in Salt Lake. We have a neighbor that teaches in that DLI program.
Okay. And in the public school system, though?
There are some charters like the one in Salt Lake that aren't a good apples to apples comparison and have had their own struggles for different reasons. There are 2 others, if I remember, one in Davis and one in Park City, but they run their programs differently than what we're talking about. And so do we have a clear model? No, we don't. But keep in mind that of the 4 schools, there are about 800 DLI students from those 4 schools. So if every one of them came, gosh, that's a lot.
That's
We don't-
4 grades per.
We don't
4 teachers
anticipate,
per
we don't
grade, wouldn't you say?
anticipate everyone, we never get everyone. But that's why, just like when Mill Creek closed, and in fact, Amber Clayton, who works here in the district now, was at the meeting tonight to help speak to the challenge and the transitioning that she did about, hey, the survey is one thing, but then we have to contact families and try to get families committed. And that worked pretty well, better than most of our survey data does, because once you get families on the phone and ask them to commit, so out of 800, if we get 400 to commit, the question we have to ask is, what is our threshold? How many do we have to get to commit to that DLI magnet to feel comfortable in saying we have enough? Then let's build from there. Then let's try to recapture students from the charter schools. Let's attract and attract them from outside of the district if we want to, depending on capacity.
But Steve, if you're saying there are 800 DLI kids in that area, and 800, let's say, just for example, if we sent them all to Valley Crest and that became a magnet school and Monroe and Valley Crest became one school, that boundary, you're leaving Stansbury and Hillsdale with a very small population. Stansbury's in a better spot because of Redwood, but Hillsdale, I mean, so I think that there could be potential other boundary shifts. Is PAC looking at that and in agreement with me on that, or am I not seeing it correctly?
Yes, again, it goes back to what we find out over the next few weeks.
Okay.
Keep in mind that not all 800 come from those 4 boundaries. They're coming from all over, especially further west. We have quite a few coming from the Magna area and all points all around. So
It's a good point, but they are still included in the number of enrollment in that
currently, yes.
school. So I think what you're saying is, look, this is evolving.
Absolutely.
I would add, prior to a change in my position in attending PAC, this was the thrust of our conversation. And some of these other recommendations that are not tied directly to DLI will have impacts on enrollment in those other areas. So the recommendation on the Redwood closure is contingent on this other piece, knowing that we would want to shore up those other populations in those areas. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the PAC is looking at it, and we want them to, right? A comprehensive look as much as they possibly can without trying to knock over too many dominoes that we can't really control. It gets too unwieldy, I guess would be the way to say that.
That's a good way to say it.
I will say this too. I know that we were actually considering more closures part of this area and a potential recommendation here. I don't know where PAC has gone on that. Obviously, we're not seeing that recommendation here, but we did want to kind of see what played out with this DLI standalone magnet. Right. To see if we're drawing. And the goal there is really to market that. We might be back with a name change if this is approved to directly compete with charter schools in the area and try and draw back kids that we've lost to charters with this standalone DLI school. The benefit of trying this without closing an additional school also gives us a chance to see what it looks like. Obviously, a small DLI school is a huge struggle, but not much more of a struggle than a dual immersion school that is small. And so we are addressing at least one major problem, and we can come back and evaluate whether an additional closure in the area is merited in the 2026 study.
Keep in mind, if you look at this slide, the absolute straightforward closure study was Orchard and Redwood. The DLI/closure study. So in other words, Valley Crest, Monroe, and Hillsdale Stansbury could by law, are we still satisfying the timelines of the statute to say that if we, as a district and board, wanted to close one of the other schools, it's possible. We still have that option. But we don't know that until we decide that we have enough data to decide DLI.
And we lose that window on the first week of October.
If the board chooses to follow through with the motions tonight, it would be along that same November, December timeframe that decision could be made. But we would obviously want to communicate that very clearly in our meetings later this week or next week with the public that this is certainly a possibility. That would be the notification piece on this.
I only included these slides. This is fairly unusual for me to include wording of a motion in this slide, but this is the wording that we will use going forward for years unless and until there's another update to the statute. And it was very specific. And so I just included it. I know you have the wording in your, I believe your agenda if you want to use that, but Ben, anything to add? I know we have some meetings. And
after her question, I had.
Just before, just more of a comment, I mean, or a request, because I do think, yeah, we have that wording in DLI/closure study. I think it will feel very last minute to the families in those school boundaries for us to come out next month and say we're now recommending closure of, Monroe.
Public school.
Right? Like, it feels very last minute, even though that's in the title of what we've said. So just the sooner we can have some information on that, the better.
I agree.
Also, the motion that's written here does not say, it says to potentially alter school programs. It does not say potential closure.
So there are 3 different motions here.
Yeah, I'm looking at the third motion, seeing that one is directed at Valley Crest, Monroe, Hillsdale, Stansbury. and the other two don't seem to be directed at those 4 schools.
With due respect, I know we've discussed this here. I would not recommend that the board consider that at this point in time. The original discussion from PAC was to let's work through this DLI equation and see what the fallout is and how many students we actually have still remaining at those other schools that have had DLI programs. Sherry Sorensen is texting me. She wanted to let the board know that Cache and Logan districts have magnets that are DLI. Park City does not, it's not a magnet, it's a neighborhood school that's an all DLI. So it is a boundaried school, but it is all DLI. So if you don't want DLI, you special permit somewhere else. And also point out that Hillsdale only has 100 total DLI students. And again, our survey work on the front end of this study indicated that 80% of those would not leave their school if the program was removed. So the expectation, that's why I'm a little bit leery about pursuing that line. I agree with Kim. I don't think that's sufficient notice to say suddenly, oh, by the way, we know we noticed you way back when, but now we can legally close your school. That feels like a little bit bait and switch. And I don't think anybody's trying to do something nefarious, but I think the appropriate step here would be to allow to see if this DLI thing kind of works out and then come back and make adjustments in 2026 when we know we'll be back in that area again.
If necessary.
And I would point out one last thing, if the board would permit, our DLI committee, I'm asking a question for clarification's sake for the board. Our DLI subcommittee feels strongly about the one main magnet option, but I requested that they go to the public with 2 options, just to make sure that we were vetting out. I know they looked at a multitude of options and they're prepared to address those in the meetings that you held today and other meetings, but we did also want to say that we were open to. So what are our 2 best options? That's what you see here in this proposal.
Can I ask a clarifying then? You said that magnet school would not have boundaries. Is that correct? Would it be total opt-in only and no boundaries, students in that?
Keeping in mind that on the west side, there are 2 other schools that will have DLI Spanish. Vista and Granger L will continue. So we anticipate it may be tough to transport students from those boundaries or ones in those areas. What we've discussed so far is generally the green box, that's the area that we could transport from to a DLI magnet.
So kind of like we do the ALC program or something similar?
A region or an area. Correct.
Region or area,
And
so
we would
that
have
would
to
be the
work with
DLI regional.
Yes, we would have
magnet
to work
school
with
for
transportation to see exactly what that looks like with their
Which
GIs.
brings up another question that we'll be bringing to the board in the future about non-reimbursed routes. So just know that we're planning on, right, Todd? Excited about that conversation.
Well, I have families already transporting their own students to special permit to DLI because we don't have a program in Magna. So I do know we have students that are already doing that. So if they had a bus that they could catch, I think they would be in heaven, so.
I'll say the DLI task force was very clear. By far, their recommendation, that included principals, current and former principals of all those schools, and even some teachers, but they were very clear that by far they supported and felt like there was momentum for a magnet school. And even in my meeting today, talking to faculty, I was very clear and transparent and said, I quite frankly feel and expressed that same sentiment from the task force that momentum is leaning towards a magnet. However, we're here, especially the next couple of days, and in the survey, it asks, you know, with these different options, which one do you prefer? We need to make sure we're not missing something. We need to know what the parents do prefer. But
we have a parent in the room. Hi, Amy. How's it going? Who personally addressed this board and wrote communications to that effect. So we're trying to listen and reflect the requests from our community on this.
Can you just clarify the feedback that's been solicited? Is that just DLI families, or is it also other families in those schools that could be affected?
That survey goes out to those parents starting tomorrow.
Which families? But to which families?
DLI.
Only DLI,
families.
because I'm interested if, so we do a magnet school. Now that school becomes DLI only. Are there families in that school who are now unhappy because they're going to have to go somewhere else because they didn't want the DLI program?
Well,
are we getting that feedback as
To
well?
be clear, yes. The meetings, so the two meetings, the next 2 days, are specifically for current DLI parents. And that survey is different, just asking, hey, if you're currently in the program, will you continue to do this or this? What would you choose? Then there are other surveys and feedback opportunities for the public at large, for everyone involved. Because I'll absolutely be talking about everything, all the DLI, plus all the boundary issues in next week's meetings.
We're trying to predict current parent involvement and participation behavior, and then at some point, once a final decision is rendered, then we can go out and market it to the broader public.
Because essentially, if we choose Monroe to be the DLI magnet, we're essentially closing that school to the neighborhood. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's exactly what we'd be doing.
Because then you're taking those and you're putting them either at Valley Crest or Hillsdale.
Under the legislative definition, I would say no. And Doug is over there looking at his policy. I think you're correct, but for our sake here, just to clarify the public's sake, I don't think that meets the statutory definition. And that's really actually very critical. We need
So it would be a boundary change.
Well, I mean, people could go to that school still from the neighborhood if they wanted to be in DLI.
If they want to be in DLI, but it's not
But it's not their
school.
boundaried
It's not your
school
official-
anymore.
So it is just changing a boundary then.
Yeah, so legally one thing, but to the neighborhood, it'll be the same as
feel-
closing a school.
Yeah.
Right. That's what it'll feel like, yeah.
Yeah, it will feel like that.
Can I just iterate something that I'm new to the PAC, but I came in and really kind of got exposed to this and felt out the people on the PAC and what they were excited about between the two options. And the thing that hasn't been said that I want to make sure we talk about, the DLI Magnet program is an innovative, exciting adjustment as opposed to a reaction to declining numbers that just kind of means we're giving in to circumstances. And those two differences is, I think, the reason why the PAC's so excited about this DLI magnet school is because it's innovative, it's exciting. People will come from possibly outside of our boundaries or outside of our current enrollment. It's an excitement that's why the energy's there. The other option does bring into play much more so that we maybe have to close one of the 4 schools, as opposed to this way, we're not closing, we're just changing a boundary.
And again, it's such a struggle, it's a challenge with small school populations in a traditional environment, and that goes tenfold when it's a DLI program in a small school. And so this addresses multitude of problems, this proposal.
Yeah, another way to say that is this school stops serving 2 masters and can go to 1. A lot easier to stand in that environment.
I just also want to remind the board that, if we decide to do a magnet school, that kind of sets a standard that now we do magnet schools. I can think of the implications in my area, and so I think we need to remember that there are implications beyond just this boundary study and making a decision like that. I'm not saying that they're negative. I'm just saying we should really make sure to think through the broader implications.
Kim, did you have something else?
Yeah, is there a cost at all associated with creating a magnet school? I mean, my initial assumption would be there shouldn't be outside of the busing that you alluded to, but is there any other cost associated with that?
We're all staring at Todd for a moment, but I'll just say, in addition to potential transportation, if there's a rebranding, if there's even what we think of as fairly simple things, a new mascot, new school colors, or rebranding, signage, all those kinds of things, all those things come with cost. I'm not the expert. I don't know what that number looks like.
Some marketing on an annual basis, and on top of that.
Yes.
And it'll also come down to how you schedule the sections. Is it a 4-section model, 2-section model? What exactly will the magnet support? Because you have both the target language and the English language being taught in the classes. So you have to manage that, and that has FTE implications.
I think there's also a sense in which, if you did a magnet school, you could be a little bit competing with yourself. because now you're actually attracting kids away from your neighborhood school. So
Which is what we're
now
doing already.
Is your magnet school competing with your neighborhood schools?
I think we do that already, Julie, if you want to know the truth, because I think a lot of my,
Yeah,
a lot of my
you're right.
people just
Chris, you're
special
right.
permit out when there's a program they want to go to.
You're right, I agree with you.
Connie, did you have something? You were looking like you were going to pull your microphone down.
You have the 2 meetings this week. Will you give us the information? I mean, I'm sure we'll get it sooner. Do you want us to go to those meetings? Would that be helpful?
That would be lovely to have you at
I'm
any and all
planning
of
to
those
go to them,
meetings.
Connie.
but,
I'll save you a seat.
I'm going Thursday.
So again, just to reiterate, the meetings the next 2 days, tomorrow's at Valley Crest, the next day is at Stansberry. These are DLI specific. I do offer a 5-minute overview of the study, so they understand why we're doing what we're doing,
We're going to
potentially.
time you on that, Steve.
6.
We're going to time you on it.
Oh, so yeah, okay, good luck. You can stand up and hold me to it. Then next week, the 11th and 12th, at Granger and Hunter Jr., those will be more comprehensive. We'll talk about DLI, but of course, everything else that we're talking about tonight.
Okay, plenty. Thank you.
Karen, did you have anything further?
No, unless you want me to make a motion.
I mean,
I'm ready to vote.
Go ahead. So,
I think we're to the
Do
point now
it.
where there's a lot of, I mean, we could sit and we could talk ifs and maybes and, who knows what, but right now, it's so much just depending on this community feedback that I think we've got to take time to get that community feedback. So I'm in favor of moving these 3 motions forward and seeing, what good work Steve's group does in the PAC and reaching out to the community for what they want it to look like. What, DLI, closures, all of it, so that's where I'm at.
thanks, Karen.
Okay, you should make a motion.
Okay, just read what's on the screen.
So
Is this the first one?
yeah, the first one, this is mostly just because we have to make the notification. That's why we have to go back and do these. We have to make the motion to make to initiate the notification.
Okay, but the one on the screen, is that what I should read?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. I move that we approve a motion to initiate the notification required for the potential school closure of Redwood Elementary and Orchard Elementary under subsection 23B2 through 4 of HB 341.
I'll second that.
Right, we have a motion and a second to initiate the notification required for the potential school closure of Redwood Elementary and Orchard Elementary under the subsection 23B 2 through 4 of HB 341. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Second motion is in regard to the corridor study.
I move that we initiate the notifications required for boundary adjustments as described in the 3500 South Corridor Study under subsections 23B2 through 4 of HB 341.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to initiate the notifications required for boundary adjustments as described in the 3500 South Corridor Study under subsection 23B 2 through 4 of HB 341. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. And the last one?
I move to initiate the notifications required to potentially alter school programs at Valley Crest, Monroe, Hillsdale, and/or Stansberry Elementary Schools under subsections 23B2 through 4 of HB 341.
I'll second it.
Right, we have a motion and a second to initiate the notifications required to potentially alter school programs at Valley Crest, Monroe, Hillsdale, and/or Stansberry Elementary Schools under subsections 23B 2 through 4 of HB 341. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
We will see you probably later this week and next. will bring the Chick-fil-A. Ben will bring the Chick-fil-A. I'm just kidding. All right. We are going to invite Doug to come on up. This is our second reading for Article 9A1C, Employment and Supervision of Relatives. Turn the time over to Doug.
Thank you, board members. We have a light workload tonight. We just have the one second reading to discuss. This is Article 9A1C. This is Employment and Supervision of Relatives. Consistent with Utah Code, this policy establishes the prohibitions and exceptions related to hiring, decisions, and supervising family members or relatives of a current employee, otherwise known as the nepotism policy or anti-nepotism policy. This policy incorporates the policy statement, and further procedures subject to this policy are also contained in Memorandum 134, if you'd like to reference that as well. And I would love to answer any questions or address any concerns that you might have.
I know we have a ton of questions, right? Burning questions.
Will you accept a motion?
I will accept a motion if there's no questions.
I move that we approve Article 9A1C, Employment and Supervision of Relatives, for a second reading.
You want to do a second and final?
And final reading.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve Article 9A1C, Employment and Supervision of Relatives, as a second and final reading. Is there any further discussion on this? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you,
Doug,
board
that was
members.
the easiest. Nice, Doug. Good job. All right, and that brings us to our superintendent and board reports. We'll turn the time over to Superintendent Mosley.
Thank you. What an incredible and great start to the school year. I was a little bit leery about being out in schools on the first few weeks of school because I don't know if it's hard for our teachers or for our principals. Are so busy with so many other aspects of the start of the school year. So I actually coordinated with GEA to get some invites from some teachers who wouldn't mind me showing up and spending time in their classrooms. In addition to that, we had some kinder hotspots with some unusual enrollments. One school that had over 25 new students that we were completely unaware of, and they were dealing with some of those challenges. So I've been quite busy. I think I've been in almost 36 schools and classroom spaces, and spending extensive time. I think I'm up to 22 kindergarten hugs, unsolicited. And I gotta tell you, that is, and if you need a hug, that's the hug to get. Like, if you're having a bad day, go visit a kindergarten classroom. It's amazing. It's the most incredible thing in the world. And so just very grateful for the efforts being made to get the school year underway. Particularly pleased with the cell phone policy implementation in a lot of new schools and seeing how that's working, and seeing the impact of having kids engaged, and having our principals complain about how loud the lunchroom is, because kids are actually engaging with one another and socializing again. So very grateful for the opportunity to get some feedback on that policy, and gather some data on that. I did also want to point out the Constitution Month and Constitution Day on September 17th, and we pushed out some content to our schools and look forward to some incredible celebrations and recognitions. I love teaching about the Constitution. That's one of the things that I've been doing in the class that I'm working on. I want to point out too, we did a report in the interim at the legislature, where we identified that over 20,000 of our students are multi-language learners. And I had the pleasure of being out in a freshman math class at Cypress High School. And I saw the direct impact of those challenges with our students, and just to see how our teachers work and interact with kids who don't understand what they're learning. And I know we have strategies on how we approach that, and we need to provide some additional resources and supports to our teachers on a number of fronts, but that's something that we need to keep working on, and I was grateful for the chance to see how that was working in our school. Last but not least, this is the Kearns High School football game, and that is my friend Austin. And on the third day of school, I was at Kearns Junior, and I helped Austin with his facts assignment and putting together a new spreadsheet in Google Drive and how to organize himself in his class. And I didn't think much of it. I don't think I was very helpful at all, in fact. But it was at the football game, and he called me over, and I honestly couldn't remember him at first. And so this is me trying to remember who Austin is. He took me over and introduced me to his parents, and they were heavily involved at the Kearns game. And he was just so pleased that he knew me, and I was pleased that he remembered who I was. And just grateful for the chance to be out in our schools and be able to get a follow-up with Austin and make sure he's doing well in his class. But such amazing, incredible things happening in our schools and our classrooms, and I'm just grateful to be a part of it.
Superintendent Karen, do you want to go first?
I don't have anything new to report, just thanks to teachers for their efforts, administrators for the beginning of the school year.
Thanks, Karen. Clark?
I would just echo the sentiment from our superintendent that it is awesome to be in our schools. I was at 5 different either community council or PTA or other types of school meetings today. And it's great to be back. It's busy and I'm tired, but what a great day today to be in our schools. Thank you.
Clark. Chris?
I just have one thing. Our board and our Budget and Finance Committee met today, and we talked about our capital plans. And Todd put together a great package that I would love you guys to look at on Board Book, please. And possibly future, maybe board study session about some change, maybe looking at our capital plans in a different way. So if you guys would please look at that. It's in Board Book currently, so you should be able to access it. And if you have any questions to ask Todd or Connie or Clark. I'm like that guy over there.
Clark with a
And
D.
then we can talk about like what we want it to look like going from here, because we have a certain plan in place, but you know, we've had challenges with our capital projects with budgeting, and so we would love to get some feedback from board members on that. So that'd be great. Also, I just want to make the note that my community, every school in my basically area is changing next year. So we're opening a junior high, we're moving our high school, we are possibly closing an elementary, and every school will now have 6th grade go to the junior high. So every single one of my schools is changing, and I know that is very, makes a lot of people anxious in my area. So I just want to put the word out there that we are looking at all those things. We are I've met with the principal at Cypress, and he invited me to a meeting with the junior high principals and some district folks there, that they're looking at every little thing right now so that we can make this as smooth as possible. I watched Westlake come into action, and I thought, oh no, this is us next year, but not just with one school. So it's going to be some big changes in my area, and I know the process is starting, but I will take any feedback from anyone who's done this, because it's a lot. It's a lot on our schools, it's a lot on our teachers, it's a lot on our families, and I'm just looking forward to making sure we have all the best possible changes all at once come to fruition. So, thanks.
Thanks, Connie.
I am on the Parks and Rec, County Parks and Rec Advisory Board. There's a lot going on. One of the things that is within our district is the river Jordan River from 21st South to 54th South, which is part of Mill Creek on the east side and Murray. But on both sides, they're taking and own a good amount of land, and so they're improving that to make it more friendly. And that's just in the planning stages right now, but and it will be ongoing. They have done some things around 21st South. They're at between 33rd, 35 and 3100 South. They've got some things going in there. Tracy Aviary is got a place now just south of 39th South, near Walker Elementary. And so they're just wanting the river to become friendly and people. So that's within our district. I thought I'd share that.
Kim?
I echo some of Krista's comments just about changes happening to schools in my area. My entire area is included in our boundary study. So potential changes coming there too. So again, I'm going to piggyback on what you said, and just anyone who is listening, feedback is welcome. So please reach out. I'll be doing what I can to get out to schools and get feedback there as well. As far as reports go, I don't have anything to report. Our first district community council meeting will be at the end of October at Kearns Junior. So more to come later.
USBA update. There is a meeting, I believe. Have you guys been receiving updates about these fall policy webinars? Have you been getting that in your email?
The Wednesday ones?
There's one tomorrow at 11 o'clock, and you should have received a Zoom link. So I haven't been to one yet, but I think this is only the second one. But they're basically just like highlighting a policy and helping you understand what it is. Both, I believe, they're talking about ones that were passed already. Like not what has been happening in the interim, but what has laws that were passed last session. Also on September 25th, you should have been or will be invited to go to our regional fall meeting, and that's at 6 p.m. So put that down on your calendar. And that will be at the USBA head offices or whatever you call that. But you'll receive an invitation if you haven't already, but put it on your calendar. And then that same week, September 3rd through, I guess, the 27th, is when we plan to have legislators in our buildings. And each of you should have received, or should have been CC'd on invitations to the legislators who represent you. A lot of them I've received back what days and times they think they could do. Most of them are like, any of these 3 days, you know. So we'll sit down and strategically choose where they should go and what they should engage in while they're in our schools. So if you have ideas or thoughts that you think somebody particularly would benefit from seeing in your schools or in your area, be sure to get that feedback to me, because I will be a part of the assigning of those legislators.
Kindergarten classrooms.
For sure, okay. And I just was going to just show. Did you see this? I wanted to brag that I wrote this classroom in mustard.
I want you to know, Julie, I think about that every time I see that graphic.
Myself. I'm really proud. I'm also stuck up about that today. And so, yeah, I just wanted to highlight that accomplishment of mine.
Good job, Julie.
Sorry.
Make sure you put that. Give Stacy a picture.
I also wanted to know, what?
We need to put that in the record.
Yeah, could that go in the minutes? I also wanted to just say that the evaluation committee has been on hiatus, and we will be now reconvening. It's about time for us to reconvene. So, evaluation committee, you've been warned.
Thank you, Julie. As far as mine, I was gonna just share with you, I invited my friend who's on the Jordan board. I just said, hey, things are going really well over at Granger, if you wanna go. And so she said, I'd love to go see. And so I invited her to come, and Tyler was great to host us. He actually ended up with 3 board members as well as their superintendent and assistant superintendent over at Granger. But Tyler was fantastic in just sharing kind of some of the things that, just some of the things that are happening with this cell phone policy. And I just want to say it is something that other districts are watching us and seeing how it goes. I was blown away by how it looks there. So hats off to that community and to that school. I am eagerly anticipating watching what's happening in all of our schools and see how I'd love to get the data back from that. So I just thought I'd share with you. I did let Karen know before I went over there with them, but just so you guys know, I did take those board members and superintendency over there. And then just a quick reminder for anybody who is listening still, there's some materials that are available for us to review still on our website in relation to maturation in sex ed. We will be hearing that in our next meeting in our study session this month. So if you have any comments on those, we would like to gather any data for that. That would be great. And with that, I will entertain a motion.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thanks for sticking with